This is Jonah with Itri, and this is our quick reference video on entering a vehicle into AssetWorks. So you're going to start in the Fleet Equipment screen, and to get there you'll need to go to the Screens menu and search for Fleet Equipment in the search bar. There it is. We'll open up that screen, and we'll actually want to add this screen to our favorites. So we'll go back into the Screens menu, find the Fleet Equipment screen in our search history, select it by clicking on it once, and add it to our favorites with the blue star. So we'll open up the Fleet Equipment screen to enter a vehicle into EAM. And so we're not actually going to add a new record, we're going to search for and copy an existing record. And the way that we're going to do that is through this search magnifying glass. And we're going to type in the prefix of your agency. So I'm going to do JCATS. And you're going to add a wildcard in order to search for all equipment IDs with that prefix. So that wildcard is a %. Then you're going to scroll down to the Lifecycle Status Code ID, and you'll hit the drop down, and that'll give you your list of options. You're going to select Active, or A for Active. Next, you can save that filter to your named filters by giving it a name and clicking the Save As button. You can also make this your default filter by checking this box. Then you're going to apply the filter, and that will bring up all your vehicles. You'll then find a vehicle that's most similar to the one you're trying to add. So I'll go with 106 here. You'll click on that vehicle to select it, and then you'll hit the copy button up here at the top. So that copy button will open up a record with most of the fields already filled out for you, and all you'll have to do is enter the pertinent information for the new vehicle. So we'll give it a new equipment ID. And we'll change the model year. Let's say we're entering a 2020 Ford Transit vehicle. So for any of these fields with a drop-down list, right, you can delete what's in the field, hit the drop-down, and it'll show you all of your options. You can also filter what's in the drop-down by entering any amount of information and hitting the drop down, and it will filter for just that pre-information. So then you'll go through and check all of these details about the vehicle. You'll change the model ID if necessary. Since we're entering a Ford Transit vehicle, we'll make sure that the model ID is Transit, and we'll enter the equipment type. Right, so that would be filtering for a 2019 Ford Transit, but we want to actually create a record for a 2020 Ford Transit vehicle. So what we'll do is we'll actually open up the equipment type primary information screen through this magnifying glass. Now if you are unable to access this equipment type screen through the small magnifying glass in the Fleet Equipment screen, it may be due to the pop-ups on your browser being blocked. And I'll show you what that looks like in the production site. in the fleet equipment screen, you'll have this equipment type magnifying glass here, and you'll click it and nothing will happen. And the reason for that is this little box up here in the top of the browser, and you'll need to always allow pop-ups and redirects. Okay, and then your equipment type screen will open up. So in the equipment type screen, we'll start with an existing record, and if this record doesn't pop up because there's nothing in the field already, you can search for the existing record, 2019 Ford Transit, apply that filter, and then copy this record to create your 2020 Ford Transit record. Okay, so we'll type that into the ID. Change the description and the year. And just make sure that all the rest of the information for that record is accurate. The gold and blue fields are actually the only ones that are either required or optional. Everything else is at your discretion. Just make sure that the active checkbox is checked and then save that record. Once that equipment type is saved, you can find it in the equipment type field in the fleet equipment screen. And add it to your record. Next, you will make sure that the description is correct. You'll check the color and enter a serial number, which is actually the VIN number for the vehicle. So I've got one here. And what I like to do is make sure that this VIN number is correct by checking it against an online database. And the one that I like to use is called decodethis.com. And all you do is punch the VIN number into the website's decoder, click decode, and it will find the vehicle. Now if you enter an incorrect VIN number, you'll get back a no match in their database. So that's just a good method for keeping accurate VIN numbers in your database. So next we'll go down to the meter info. For an agency that does their lifts as components, you will not have a meter 2. If you do have your lifts done by time, you will have a meter 2, and your equipment class will probably be different. It will look something like van 2 meter 1000, and that will show you a lift cycle in the meter 2. And that's only if you do your lifts by time. Again, if you do your lifts as components, your equipment class will look something like medium mileage van. You'll just enter your meter at delivery, your latest meter reading, and your life total, which should be the same as your latest meter reading. Now if you do your lifts by time, you'll enter the same information for the lift in the meter 2 column. Next we'll move on to classes. You shouldn't need to change anything because all of that information should be populated from the record you copied. Same thing with locations, assignments as well, and accounts. So really until you get to the status information, there shouldn't be anything you need to adjust. Now in the lifecycle status code ID, you'll just make sure that's active. And then in the PTMS use, you'll want to check that record as being either a revenue service vehicle or a service vehicle. So this is going to be a revenue service vehicle. Your PTMS seating is going to be ambulatory, and then the slash sign, non-ambulatory. So these are 2 non-ambulatory seats and 9 ambulatory seats. Your PTMS type, you have a selection from the drop-down to choose from. In the physical condition, you'll choose N for new. And the mechanical condition, you'll choose E for only routine PM required. These will most likely already be filled out on the copied record. You'll input your insurance company here. This will need to be an abbreviation because it's a short field. And then you'll enter your federal funding source, usually 5311. You'll scroll down past motor pool, nothing to enter there. In the authorization section, just make sure all of these boxes are checked regardless of whether you do usage tickets or fuel tickets. Neither of those will hurt. In the comments section, you can enter anything specific you'd like to enter about that vehicle. In the messages, you'll definitely want to include a mechanic's signature field, and that will show up on the work order as well, so that a mechanic can sign off on work orders for the vehicle. Class PM information, you'll want to enter your next service number on a new vehicle as 1. That'll be the first service on the vehicle. And then you'll want to have your next PM due date as around 3 to 6 months out from when you receive the vehicle. Life meter last performed. If you haven't performed a service on this vehicle yet, that's going to be 0. And same thing for your life meter last PM start. Those should always be the same. And once you save this record, that will update your next due PM meter reading. Now, if you do your lifts by time, you would fill out this information for your lift service, and the meter 2 value would be 750, and you would input your life meter last performed as 0 and 0. Now again, you would not do any of this for a meter 2 value if you do your lifts as components. So just ignore that if you do your lifts as components. You can skip the individual PM section, scroll down to the inspection section, and you'll want to always enter an annual inspection here. And you'll input your next due as 1 year out from when you receive the vehicle. Your number of time units will always be 365, and that's for days. Time units is days.
In addition, you are going to want to add a camera service to your inspections. So under inspection service, you'll hit the drop down and you'll select camera inspection. That'll add the inspection service to your list, and then you can type in a next due. We recommend you do these camera inspection services every 6 months or so. So you would use 182 days. And time unit is once again going to be days, which you can select from the drop-down. In addition, there are a number of other inspection services that you may want to add to each vehicle record. We do recommend you have a fire extinguisher service and perhaps an emergency exit inspection service if you do those.
You'll scroll past the code section unless you have an alternative fuel type, and you can search for those here, including CNG, biodiesel. These are all included here, and you can input the capacity in this field. You'll scroll past recurring costs and credit cards into the acquisition section. This information is optional for you, but if you'd like to record the delivery date, And the in-service date, you can do that here, as well as the original cost, the project number, another entry for the type of funding source, and then the funding breakdown. So 80-10-10 is generally what 5311 is broken down into. If you're not going to include this information, it's recommended that you delete what's in here. Okay, so we'll go down to the license number. You'll want to include this license number, vehicle license plate number, as well as the insurance policy number. You'll keep scrolling down past NCDOT approvals, past the owner and depreciation section. If you'd like to include your warranty information for the vehicle or for the lift, you can include that information here, or you can include the warranty information for the lift in the components screen, which we'll go over in another video. You'll scroll down to the replacement disposition section, and if you'd like to give an estimated replacement period of time, you can give the month, year, and the meter at which you expect to replace the vehicle, and the expected cost. Then you can give a planned retirement date, and when you actually retire the vehicle, the retirement date, and then the disposition date when the vehicle is sold. You can also give the gross sale price when the vehicle is sold. The only field in which we request you input information is the Replaces Equipment ID field. This is the equipment ID for the vehicle that this vehicle you are entering currently replaces. Right? So say we were replacing JCATS 109. We were going to retire that. We would input into this field JCATS 109. Make sure with the drop down that that's accurate. Okay. And we'll move on. And that is all you need to know for entering a new vehicle. Now, I'd like to show what it looks like when you enter an existing record into the equipment ID and try to save that record. So you're going to get an error message, and it's going to say cannot add equipment ID JCATS 109 already defined in database. So that tells you exactly why that record is not acceptable. You'll need to enter a unique equipment ID, and if you'd like to reuse an ID, you'll have to change the old ID to something with a unique character like an A at the end. So we're going to go back to JCATS 200, and we'll save this record. And this is a error message that pops up in the test site that will not occur in the production site. So as you can see, JCATS 200 appears in our records now and has been added to your active fleet. So that's all you need to know for adding a vehicle to EAM. Make sure to retire or dispose of the old vehicle from your fleet, and also make sure to enter the corresponding component lift record in the components screen. We will go over how to retire or dispose of a vehicle in an additional video, and we will also go over how to add a component record for the corresponding lift in an additional video. Thank you for watching this video, and we'll see you in the next one.